If someone told me that a single conversation, just a few quiet minutes in a dim office, would shake the walls I'd spent decades building around myself, I would have laughed. But what happened that Tuesday morning did more than surprise me. It exposed truths I didn't know I was hiding from, truths about my work, my worth, and the way someone's simple honesty can unravel years of silence. Stay with me, because what my boss's assistant told me that day changed everything. Before we dive into this story, do me one quick favor. Tell me in the comments which city you're watching from, and if you love stories that pull you in, stories that feel real and human and personal. Hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Your support helps this channel more than you can imagine. Alright, let's begin. It started on a cool Tuesday morning. The kind where the sun seems half awake, just barely stretching across the horizon. You know those mornings where people move slower than usual, carrying leftover weekend heaviness in their shoulders? Yeah, it was one of those days. I had just settled into my cubicle, clutching a mug of coffee that had already lost its heat, when my phone buzzed. I looked at the screen and saw Daniel's name, my boss's assistant. Calm voice, calm face, calm everything. He never called me unless something needed attention. "Hey, could you come to the main office when you have a moment?" he said. His tone wasn't urgent, but there was a quiet seriousness underneath it, something subtle enough to notice without fully understanding. And at my age, mid-50s, with decades in this company, you learn that unexpected calls to the top floor usually mean one of two things: a big opportunity or a big problem. As I walked down the hallway, my thoughts bounced between those two possibilities. The hallway felt longer than usual, those beige walls humming with printers, keyboard clicks, scattered conversations. Everything looked normal on the outside. But inside me? A tiny knot twisted in my stomach. That strange, soft intuition that whispers something is about to shift. When I reached the glass door of my boss's suite, I noticed it was half open. The lights inside were dimmer than usual. Only the soft glow of the tall window and a small desk lamp lit the room. My boss wasn't there. Instead, Daniel stood by the window, hands tucked loosely in front of him, looking out at the parking lot as if he was practicing what he was about to say. He turned when he heard me step inside and smiled politely, the same gentle smile he always offered. But his eyes, there was something different there. Something thoughtful. Something heavier than usual. Maybe cautious. "Thanks for coming," he said quietly. He gestured toward the chair in front of the desk. I sat down, placing my hands in my lap to keep them from fidgeting. Daniel didn't sit. He leaned lightly against the edge of the desk, as if grounding himself before speaking. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't about a report. This wasn't about scheduling. This was something else. Something personal. There was a stillness in the air, the kind of silence that makes you suddenly aware of your own breathing. Finally, he spoke. "I wanted to talk to you privately," he said gently. "I hope you don't mind." His voice carried no tension, no awkwardness, just honest sincerity, the kind we don't get often in an office full of rushed conversations and half-finished thoughts. I nodded, not trusting my voice yet. "I've been noticing something," he said. "The way you take on every task, every responsibility, without ever letting anyone know when it's too much. You're carrying more than people realize." He paused to let the words settle. And I think it's time someone acknowledged that. I wasn't expecting that. Not even close. A warmth rose in my face, familiar but uncomfortable, the feeling of being seen after spending years trying not to be. I'd built a career on being steady, reliable, invisible in the best way. I handled things quietly. I kept the peace. I took care of what needed to be done without asking for credit or help. And here he was peeling back a truth I didn't want anyone to look at. I swallowed, trying to stay composed. Daniel stepped closer. Not too close, just enough to feel intentional, respectful, almost protective. "You deserve more support," he said softly. "More recognition. More understanding." His words weren't loud, but they struck deep, touching a part of myself I had pushed down for years. "I didn't know anyone noticed," I finally whispered. "I did," he said. More than you think. And in that softly lit room, with the outside world continuing its busy rhythm, I sensed that this moment was the beginning of something I didn't yet understand, but something I was finally ready to face. When I walked back to my cubicle, the office felt strangely unfamiliar, as if someone had shifted the lighting or rearranged the air. People moved around me as they always did, carrying files, sipping coffee, chatting about weekend errands. Everything looked the same. But something inside me had softened, had cracked open, had finally breathed. I tried to focus on my tasks, but my mind kept replaying Daniel's voice, the sincerity in it, the gentleness. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't grand. But it was honest. I had spent years building walls made of responsibility and silence, and in a few minutes, he had tapped on them, just lightly, but enough for me to realize how tired I was of holding them up. Hours later, he appeared beside my cubicle. Calm expression, steady posture. But somehow, everything about him felt different now. He didn't interrupt me. He waited. Respectfully. Quietly. "Do you have a moment?" he asked. I nodded automatically. We walked to the break room, a small, quiet space at the end of the hall. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting long golden stripes across the table. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. Daniel sat across from me, leaning forward slightly, his forearms resting on the table. "I wanted to make sure I didn't overwhelm you earlier," he said. "I know it was a lot." His concern surprised me. Not many people asked how I felt, certainly not in a way that made me feel safe enough to answer honestly. "It wasn't overwhelming," I said. "Just unexpected. I'm not used to people noticing me that closely." He nodded with a small, warm smile. "Sometimes noticing is the easy part," he said. "Saying something, that's the harder step." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was comforting. Full of things unspoken but understood. "I hope you know," he added after a moment, "that what I said earlier wasn't just about work. It was about you. The way you carry yourself. The way you take care of everyone else before taking care of yourself." His words landed, in the quiet, honest way truths often do. For years, I had lived a life full of responsibilities. Family. Aging parents. Relationships that ended far differently than I once imagined. I had survived by staying strong, by staying quiet, by making myself small so others could lean on me. Hearing someone recognize that, without judgment, felt like he'd opened a window in a room that had been closed for too long. "I didn't think anyone noticed," I said softly. "I did," he replied. "More than you realize." His words hung between us, gentle, warm, and carrying a subtle tension. Not romantic tension. Emotional clarity. Connection. The kind of connection that sneaks up on you slowly, naturally, like the gradual glow of sunrise before it breaks fully across the sky. "If you ever want to talk," he said, leaning back slightly, giving me space, "about work, or anything, I'd like to be someone you can come to." The offer was simple, but it carried weight. It echoed in my chest. "Thank you," I said, meaning it more than he knew. The day went on, but with a different rhythm, a different warmth. Every glimpse of the main office reminded me of our conversation, not as a distraction, but as reassurance. By the time the sun dipped low and the office lights flicked on, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Anticipation. Not chaos. Not fear. Not drama. Just anticipation for something honest, something human, something unfolding quietly but undeniably. When I gathered my things and walked toward the elevator, I saw Daniel at the far end of the hallway, finishing some notes at the. She walked toward the elevator with a lighter heart, finally aware of her own worth. Daniel looked up, their eyes meeting for a moment that said more than words could. Nothing between them was defined, yet everything felt possible in a new, quiet way. And for the first time in years, she stepped into tomorrow with hope instead of heaviness.